What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul and I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident, and I am an English teacher. Today I'm going to be talking about the different types of English teaching careers one might pursue in Japan. I'm going to break down the different types of careers that are possible, some basic details of what kind of career that might be or the best way to go about that career, and also I'm going to talk about society's impressions, both Japanese society and what other foreigners think about people that hold careers in these types of jobs. So I'm going to start off right away by stating that if you're doing what you love and you find a job that you really like and you want to stay in it and you are fine with, or at least put up with, whatever salary and benefits they give to you, and that's all good, do what you love. Do what makes you happy. Do the job that you feel comfortable in. And I'm not going to make any judgment on any different types of careers. I've done most of the ones I'm about to talk about before I settled into my current English teaching career. So let's get that out of the way. Okay, first, a quick breakdown of the different types of careers that there are. There is the Eikaiwa industry, which is the English conversation school industry. This is where you would be employed by companies, and basically you're teaching English conversation to children, students, adults, and you're being paid by the company to do these classes of conversation, etc. The next way is to be an assistant language teacher, or ALT, sometimes called an AET, assistant English teacher. And in that type of position, you're actually put into a Japanese public school, like an elementary, junior high school, or high school. And you team teach with the Japanese English teacher and work together with them. The third way is you could be employed directly by a private high school, junior high school, elementary school, or preschool. So working directly for a private school or private school system. And another way is if you have, a lot of people you've made enough connections, you could have your own tutoring business, your own students that you teach at your place where you live, or you create an office front or something. A lot of people that I know who've gone this route end up being more of a business owner rather than actually an English teacher anymore, which is fine. But I'm not really going to talk about that one very much because, again, that's more like a business owner than an English teaching career. Maybe a good topic for another day. And finally, there's what I do, which is teaching English in the university. Although these days I'm not teaching grammar and reading and that kind of stuff so much anymore. I'm teaching more content classes in English, like academic writing, sustainable tourism, that kind of thing. Now, I'm going to start by talking about the Eikaiwa, or English Conversation School industry, and the type of career you might find in that industry. Basically, there's two ways to go. Either be employed by a major corporation or be employed by a more local chain, or even a mom and pop, like one store, or one school rather, type business. And of the people I know who have been in Japan for the long term and have made a career of working for an Eikaiwa, or English Conversation School, all of them are working for the smaller business, the mom and pop place, or the small local chain. I don't know anyone who has made a career out of working for Eikaiwa from one of the big corporations. And it's mainly because it is a job that has a huge turnover, and you're quite often seen as expendable, because the truth of the matter is all you need to teach in that kind of job is to have a bachelor's degree, which gets you the visa to come to Japan in the first place. Most people aren't actually English teachers who are teaching in the Eikaiwa industry. And as such, you're replaceable. There's always going to be someone new who wants to come and experience Japan and figures they might as well work while they're here, and English teaching at an Eikaiwa is an easy way to do it. So if you decide you're going to leave, the company doesn't care. They don't give you a lot of upward mobility and that sort of thing. Whereas if you're working for a local place, you become more like a family. You're actually a part of that small company, and it's more likely to feel like a long-term option. Not to mention, most of the corporate places will have their schools located conveniently around train stations in major metropolitan areas like Tokyo, Osaka, etc. And that means if you're living there, you're going to have higher rent, higher utilities. It's going to be more expensive on that relatively low salary. Now, let's get into talking about the ALT, or Assistant Language Teacher position. There are several ways to get into this type of position. One of the common ways, and the way I did it when I was an ALT, was to come on the Japan Exchange Teaching Program, or JET program. It's run by the Japanese government, and as such it ends up being kind of the most luxurious experience of being an ALT, because you have the best salary, benefits, probably have a subsidized apartment, and basically, you get to take your vacation days, etc., paid vacation days. The problem is it's not a career, because it has a term limit. Basically, you only have a certain number of years in which you can keep that job. Now, other ways to become an ALT, either after JET, or if you didn't get into the JET program itself, you could come to Japan another way. There are private companies that hire ALTs and send them out to schools in and about metropolitan areas and countryside. And there is the possibility of being directly hired by a local board of education. Now, let's talk about the companies first. The thing to know about working for a company is that you are working for the company. You are not actually part of that school or board of education, school district's system. You are employed by that outside company, and the board of educations do this. They contract with these intermediary companies because it basically dissolves them of any liability themselves. So if you leave in the middle of your contract, or you get in trouble with the law, or something happens, it's not the school district's problem. Basically, it's the company that hired you. It's their problem. They have to take care of that sort of thing, and so they're accepting the liability in that case. So there is a benefit for the school districts to do it that way, but it's not usually for the benefit of a teacher hired by these companies, because again, much like Eikaiwa, you can be rather expendable, replaceable, and yeah, it's still the case that if you can get a job directly hired by a board of education, much like the people I know who've made a career of Eikaiwa are all working for a small local company. Everyone I know who's made a career of being an ALT has been hired directly by their board of education. So they know their schools, they know the community, they know the situation they're in, they're responsible teachers, responsible adults, and the board of education is basically feeling secure that they can hire that person as an ALT and not worry about the liability issue. This is not to say that you could not be a career Eikaiwa teacher or a career ALT for these larger corporations. It's unlikely, and I don't think most people that go into those positions are looking to make them to be long-term either. I feel like no matter what kind of career in English teaching you have in Japan, you should be considering how you're going to advance your career, or become a better teacher, become a better member of that school community, etc. So don't stop growing. I was talking to a colleague who used to be a teacher trainer, and he put it to me this way. He said, what you can lose sight of very often, should try to remind yourself, is could you hold this same job you have right now in the country where you came from? And if your answer to that is no, you should probably be doing something to keep growing, get more credentials, get more knowledge, maybe get a higher degree, those kinds of things. Of course, you don't have to do that, but I feel like there is a different level or a different idea between having a career or just kind of coasting in the same job forever. But again, I'm not going to judge. If you just want to do the job that you like, and coasting is something that you don't feel like you're coasting, you feel like you're really settled and you've got a good thing going, and you're teaching successfully your students, etc., then No harm, no foul. Now, it's also possible that you could make the necessary connections to teach at a private school. You have enough teaching experience on your resume, and you get to know some people, or you find a job listing and you try for that private school. Your level of duties and things you have to do as a private school teacher will increase. I mean, you're going to have much more responsibility in those positions than if you're an Eikaiwa or ALT teacher, but it can be very, very rewarding, as you might imagine. Now, how do we find these positions? And you're probably wondering if Paul's saying that you got to have like a local company and a local board of education that's going to hire you directly, and you need to find a private school. Like, how do you find these job listings? Well, honestly, most people I know who have done that sort of path have just kept themselves open to opportunities. They came here on the JET program, or they came here working for one of the big companies, and they made connections, they kept their eyes open, they checked job sites, they met people that pointed them in the right direction, and basically, you know, be open again to, if not getting a higher degree or, you know, getting greater teaching credentials or something like that, be open to like keeping your eyes peeled for opportunities for a better position that you may be qualified for now because you have, you know, some teaching experience under your belt and have learned some Japanese, etc. I mean, it probably doesn't need to be said that the big corporations are going to have very obvious recruiting platforms that you're going to be able to find even in your home country before coming to Japan. But once in Japan, you need to keep your eyes open and look at job sites and try to meet people and, you know, figure out what's going on around you, what's available, and look for those other types of positions if you really want to stay in Japan and have a essentially better position in the long run. Now, the last one I'll talk about today is university teaching. You do need to have higher qualifications in order to apply for jobs. Gone are the days when you can just have a bachelor's or even just a master's degree, especially if you're in the larger cities. If you are in the countryside, and there are universities out in the countryside, they're few and far between compared to Tokyo or Osaka, but they do exist, and they might still be hiring, you know, someone with only a master's in, I don't know, drama or theater or something like that, because getting people to move out to the countryside is harder than getting people to move to Tokyo area. But for the most part, you're going to need higher qualifications, and more often these days a PhD. But if you have those qualifications and you have, you know, again, you have some inside knowledge into a job, you know someone that works there, or you have good letters of recommendation, you know, all the different things you can pull together for your resume, you can look into university teaching. Now, my own path was, I came to Japan as an ALT on the JET program, realized I really wanted to stay in Japan, and began researching the most obvious career paths with which to do so, and going the university route made the most sense for me. I went back to grad school in the States, and I came back to Japan with a master's, got my first job. I'm working on my PhD now, hopefully to further my career prospects. And basically that game is not so much different than if you would be doing it in your home country. So yeah, not much to say about university teaching because it's pretty self-explanatory. Get the necessary qualifications, look at job boards, try to find a place that will hire you. There's different ways to do it, in that some people will get a whole bunch of part-time jobs, you know, work at 3 different universities over the week and make their salary that way, and that has an advantage of those positions are usually pretty permanent, like they'll just keep bringing you back year after year, no questions asked. Another way is to get into contract work, which will often have a year limit. So after 5 years, for example, you will not be able to work there anymore. So there's kind of a academic musical chairs. And also there's, you know, like the US, like Europe, there's tenure. So you could possibly get a permanent job. And in my case, I do have a sort of de facto tenure at my place. I'm permanent employee, but I am still working on my PhD because there's definitely opportunities that I could take or seek out that would advance my career from where I am right now. So whatever you decide to do, I would advise never stop growing. But again, you do you. If you really love the situation you're in, you just want to keep that status quo because you're happy with it, great. No problem with that at all. Now I want to finish today talking about the perception of society and other foreigners when you say to them that you teach English or you teach Eikaiwa or you are an ALT or something like that. There is still a perception, certainly in Japan, of like all foreigners, like all white foreigners are an English teacher probably. So I know that a lot of, you know, white people or black people or, you know, foreign looking people in Japan can often have a kind of point of pride when they talk about, oh no, I don't teach English. I'm a, you know, financial advisor, or I work for this corporation in Tokyo, or da da da. Because they want to show that they are not fitting that stereotype. So that does exist, unfortunately. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with being a teacher at all. Now, if you tell people you work for an Eikaiwa or you are an ALT, they might wonder why you haven't moved on to something else. If you're older, if you're like my age, for example, and you say that you're an ALT, people might wonder about that. Because again, the impression is a lot of young people come to Japan into these teaching positions and then leave after a few years. People who have stayed for the long haul are not so common. But to that I would say that's not as big of a worry as you might think, because if you've become a part of your community and your local parents and families know who you are, basically that's not something that you should worry about, because you'll be just fine. And you know, who cares what some strangers from outside that community think. For example, I know an Eikaiwa teacher who's lived in the same town for longer than I've been in Japan and has worked at the same local company for, again, longer than I've been here myself. And everyone knows him. Like, everyone in the town knows who he is. He's basically taught, you know, several generations of children in the town, and he's just become like a fixture. He's that teacher at that school, and he gets a lot of respect for that. He's done something that you can maybe call putting in the time. He's put in the time and effort. He's proven himself to be a worthwhile and trustworthy teacher in the system, and he's respected for it. So there's that aspect of it. There is, of course, an idea that if you're working for a university that holds a higher prestige, like you don't sell, like I don't tell people that I'm an English teacher usually. I say, oh, I work for a university. Because, well, I mean, that sounds impressive in America too. If you say, oh, I'm working at a university. And people are like, oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Rather than just, oh, I'm a teacher. Which, again, I love being a teacher, and I think teachers in general should get more respect in society than they do. So I definitely don't agree with any opinions that say that, you know, being at a university is somehow makes you so much better than anyone else. I don't really hold to that kind of idea, but it definitely exists. So I feel that it's necessary to point it out. So yeah, I guess if you worry about feeling a level of prestige, then being a university English teacher is going to carry that more of that prestige in the eyes of other people, many other people, not everyone, but many other people. So if you care about that kind of thing, then go the university route. The only reason I did the university route is because for me, I felt that that was going to be a far more stable, through my research, was going to be a far more stable position for what I wanted to do in the future, which was basically stay in Japan indefinitely and even create a career here that could be turned into other opportunities on the side, or even the opportunity of going back to the States and teaching if I had to, or going to another Asian country like Singapore, for example. And that's another reason why I'm working on the PhD, because I think it always, I've said it several times in the video already, keeping your eyes open for opportunities, keeping your options open, not becoming stagnant as one thing, is something that's very important for me. And that's the reason I became a university teacher and continue to try to develop myself, not because I didn't want to identify as an ALT. Because to be perfectly honest, when I finished the JET program, if I had been given an offer of being directly hired by the Board of Education where I was working, I would have taken it. I know that at that time, and I'm willing to admit it now because it's just the truth. I would have become a direct hire by that Board of Education. I don't know if that would mean I'd still be there working for them now. I have no idea how to calculate that, of course, but it's entirely possible. I might have ended up there for the long term, like several other people that I know who did, who came as a JET, remained in their same school after the JET program ended as a direct hire, and have continued to enjoy their life as a member of their community as an assistant language teacher. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, I feel like this video is really talking to a niche audience, because I think most people who want to come to Japan and teach English are probably thinking of doing so as just a way to get to Japan, as a way to get here so you can go to some anime conventions, or so you can eat some amazing food, or you can explore like the culture of Kyoto, etc. And that's all totally fine. I think the majority of people who come to teach English are just looking at it that way. And, you know, again, you do you, but I wanted to give a little bit of details about what it might be like, or what you might want to look for if you're thinking of a career, or you want to stay in Japan in the long term, and English teaching sounds like the way for you to do it. All right, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching this particular video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.